Good morning, and we'll call to order the meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada.
The agenda is in order, Mr. Chairman, ready to be approved.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Item number 2 is to receive the General Manager's report, and the next item to talk about is one of my favorite things to talk about, and that is the Superstar of the Quarter. Our Superstar of the Quarter has only been with the RTC for a year, but he has made a dramatic impact on those that he works with. He always greets you with a smile, and his positive attitude and willingness to work are really demonstrable. Let me just give you a few examples. Recently, we had the RTC Viva Bike Vegas event. Last weekend in October, this individual worked an 18-hour shift without any overtime, went home, took a 2-hour nap, and came back and worked a 10-hour shift, all without overtime. He's a hands-on supervisor, never afraid to get his hands dirty in the operation of his duties. Let me give you another example of that. When we had a clogged sewer line at the building, we could have spent $8,000 on taking care of that, but he rolled up his sleeves, stepped up, and was personally able to fix the issue for under $1,000. And one last example, as part of the On the Move show, we needed to have some of the facilities uniforms for use for the hostess for our show. And our facility staff are all extra large or bigger. And so we didn't have a petite size in the facilities uniform. And so this individual, at his own cost, went to the mall and purchased a shirt and had the RTC logo embroidered on the shirts, came back and presented them to the communication staff. They were able to film the segment. I'd like to introduce you to the RTC's Superstar of the Quarter, Mr. Warren Rich. Would Warren please stand, come forward?
Board photo.
Everyone move it a little tighter. Good, thank you.
Congratulations to Warren Rich, and our thanks to him for his great service to the RTC and to the community. Mr. Chairman, that constitutes the General Manager's report, and your next item is item number 3, which is to recognize the extraordinary service of Commissioner Chip Maxfield. Today is the last meeting for our Vice Chairman, Commissioner Chip Maxfield, and as you know, he is an engineer, and it has been said of engineers that success in engineering is made up of 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And that's why engineers smell so bad. But that's never been true of Chip Maxfield. He has made a number of contributions to the RTC, and I can remember at one point in time him quoting something that he says very frequently. He says, if we keep doing what we've always done, we're going to keep getting what we've always gotten. And he's always been very progressive and wanted to change things to improve the community. And there was one day, shortly after he replaced Dario Herrera on the RTC, that he called me up and he said, you know, the CAT bus system is great, but we can do better. So how are you going to make it better? And I quickly thought up an idea that I'd been working on for a little while that really didn't have much. And I said, we're going to bring double-decker buses to the community. And it was Commissioner Maxfield that really spurred that idea on, because I didn't have anything to come up with. But it's been a great success. And later on, he asked me that he told me we needed to do more. And then we were able to respond with the the MAX and the ACE systems. And he has been a tremendous supporter of the Question 10 programs that we've had that have made a difference and are continuing to make a difference every day in the lives of Southern Nevadans. And just on a more personal note, I was able to work with Commissioner Maxfield when he was named to be a member of the Board of Directors for the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, which is a Washington, D.C.-based advocacy and educational organization that advocates on behalf of metropolitan planning organizations, which is one of the roles that the RTC fills. And he did a very distinguished job representing Southern Nevada in that. And through that, I had the chance to meet his lovely wife, Kathy, and she's with us here today, and I'd like to have her stand and be recognized if we could. Commissioner Woodbury, who served as chairman of this board for many, many years, couldn't be here today, but he wanted to share some of his thoughts about Commissioner Maxfield. We have a very short video to allow him to present those remarks.
I think I'm just going to miss being with a guy that I like and admire and respect so much. You know, I can't imagine.
Mike, I think if we can roll this over again, we'll try to do that with some audio.
I'm just going to miss being with a guy that I like and admire and respect so much. You know, I can't imagine anybody Maxfield not liking him. He's such a decent, friendly, likable guy. But he's also deadly serious when it comes to trying to do the right thing for the people of this community, and they will miss him a lot. Well, Chip, I wish I were there today, but I'm on the beaches of California. Somebody's got to do it, and I really wish I could be there, though, to shake your hand and give you a hug and tell you how much I admire you and think you're just such a wonderful human being. So just stay active. I know that like me, you're not going to fade away and stay out of the public arena. And so I know I'll be working with you on matters of involving worthy causes. Look forward to that, where we come at it from the private sector. And I think, Chip, you and I will be regular attendees at the upcoming flood control district and RTC meetings to point out the deficiencies of the bus service and become gadflies. And I think that's going to be our hobby from now on.
Commissioner, we'd like to present to you, I'm going to show the audience, this plaque, and thank you for steering us in the right direction. Be careful, it's heavy. And we also have this Deuce Ambassador shirt for you. We got Vegas Vic on the back. And this 4-letter word on the front that says CHIP. And if you ever get bored out of public service, you can come down and work on the strip as a Deuce Ambassador. This is one of the actual uniforms that they have. So thank you very much, Commissioner. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Mr. Chairman.
Other comments from the board? Your Honor?
Well, said it before, but for the folks who are listening, we've been blessed. Really, we've been blessed with the service of Chip. He's an extraordinary human being, a great public servant. We're gonna miss you. We really are, because you're a steadying force. Same thing that we said when Bruce stepped down. There are certain people in the community that you listen to who speak quietly, but when they speak, you have to listen, because you know you're going to get pearls of wisdom. And really, everything that you've done has pushed this commission into the right direction. You've put a little bit of pressure on Mr. Snow here, who needs a kick in the butt every now and then in order to do the right thing. And I think it's you could sleep well tonight. You could be very proud of yourself, and your family should be very proud of you, because you've served this community as well as anybody could under any of the circumstances that have confronted you. So I thank you for what you've done for Southern Nevada.
And I likewise will be repetitive from our flood control meeting, but I've been fortunate to have served with Chip in the Northwest. When I first got elected and came on the RTC and flood control boards, I constantly was wondering why everything, infrastructure, was being built out towards the southeast part of the valley. And sure enough, they ended up naming this 215 the Bruce Woodbury Beltway. And I think at that time, the Question 10 monies were supposed to be evenly distributed back then, but there was literally nothing being done until Chip Maxfield got on board. And timing, and I'm being somewhat facetious, but not with the fact that when he got on board, he literally stepped up and accelerated the Beltway, a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the attention and the dollars into the Northwest, which was the fastest growing area in the city of Las Vegas. And I could speak all day long on the professional accomplishments, the Northwest accomplishments, the bringing together of the city and the county in the Northwest, as far as creating a seamless plan out there with our equestrian and pedestrian trails and our park system. He's just been instrumental in so many great things happening in the Northwest. But I do want to emphasize, far more than what he's done professionally, he is one of the, as Commissioner Woodbury said, one of the most decent human beings I've ever met. He carries himself with honesty and integrity. His word is gold. He's in it for all the right reasons. And I just, I'm going to miss him, but I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity to learn from him. He's been a great mentor. And I would like also to recognize that, as many of us know, being as an elected official and a public servant, you make sacrifice. And I want to recognize this morning his wife, Kathy, because she is likewise a wonderful human being, and not only for the support and efforts she had to make Chip what he is, but in her own right, she's out there, be it delivering turkeys on Thanksgiving, which we did for a few years, and working through the church and outreach to the needy in our community. These two people have made such a positive impact, some publicly that we see, but far more importantly, doing the things in our community that many of us don't see, and they aren't recognized. But I'll tell you, in the Northwest, you won't find a name that has made more of an impact to the people in the Northwest than the Maxfields. And again, it's been my honor to serve with Chip, and Kathy, it's been my honor to get to know you over the years, and I wish you the very best of everything. Thank you. Susan, please.
Thank you. On behalf of the Department of Transportation, we also will truly miss you. We feel that through your efforts and insight and just common sense approach that we've been able to move forward on a lot of projects very successfully. So we wish you well, and thank you for your insight, and thank you for our partnerships.
Chairman,
Mayor?
being from Boulder City, I haven't had a lot of interaction with Commissioner Maxfield, but being on this board, I want to thank you for your leadership, and I think you've done a great job. And last month, we honored Commissioner Woodbury, and I think you have many of the similar attributes. And one of the when I'm around other people that are involved with Las Vegas and Clark County, your name always comes up as someone with integrity, and I want to thank you for your leadership and your example in that area.
Mr. Chairman, I'll
Councilman?
repeat, again, I'll tell Chip thanks. We go back a long ways. I don't want to tell everybody that because it dates us, but if you notice his picture, it didn't have no gray hair in it either. And the ones you see hanging around City Hall I didn't have no gray hair either. And I think the ones that Commissioner-elect Brown had hair, so it wears on you. So I'd like to thank Chip, and he's really been a great person to look up to and work with. And I've served as a planning commissioner, and Chip was presenting stuff to me in my city a long time ago. So I've been around Chip a long time, and I appreciate his leadership and his support for me and my family. Just want to say thanks.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, thank you to my colleagues on this board and Jacob and you and your staff. And it gets harder. You accept changes in your life, and there's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this is the end of an era that begins another. And so I want to say and repeat what I don't want to repeat what I said, but I want people to know that I truly admire and appreciate the opportunity to work with such great individuals. We like to tease Jacob, but you know, he's one of many examples of an individual that you present an issue to, and his response is, let me find a solution. And that's what we need here. We need people, wherever they are, that are solution-oriented, not adding to the problem. And Mayor, with all respect, I want to just say one thing. On the way in today, I appreciate the fact that Jacob had all those traffic signals aligned green.
Where did your integrity just go?
And I think he did that as a tribute. But it was smooth sailing, except for the accident at Rancho and Decatur. But it's those great efforts, and you know, RTC has a tremendous impact to the folks here in Southern Nevada, and I want to just, it's been a lot of fun. It's been work, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of good time to understand what the issues are with regard to transportation, what the community does and doesn't understand, like and doesn't like about whether it be mass transit or just trying to get from their home to the grocery store, and trying to work on those things. And great staffs, and with all respect when I say that word, great individuals need great leadership from boards, and so you all have been part of that, and I appreciate, again, allowing me to be part of that. So I want to just say thank you, with all sincerity, thank you for all that you've done and for allowing me to be part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner Maxfield, and thank you, members of the board. We now move to the consent agenda, which is items 4 through 39, which may be taken in one motion.
There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We now go to the Metropolitan Planning Organization portion of your agenda. And as a final nod to Commissioner Chip Maxfield, who has spent much of his time on the RTC focusing on cone reform and utilities coordination, we have item 41, and Dr. Fred O'Haney will introduce that item.
Item 40 is to receive a presentation on the RTC's web-based utility coordination project. Mr. Chairman, the 2005 state legislature, through draft Senate Bill 322, requested action from the RTC to reduce and mitigate construction-related traffic impacts in the Las Vegas area. SB 322 was held in committee due to multiple complex issues involved. A progress report was requested and provided to the 2007 legislature, identifying local steps taken to satisfy the issues raised in SB 322. In anticipation of the upcoming session next year, RTC staff has summarized the ongoing efforts in addressing 3 primary areas of need. Mr. Paul Judd, the RTC's engineering manager, is here to give a brief presentation on our ongoing efforts.
Good morning. Thank you. The 2005 state legislature, at the request of the RTC Citizens Advisory Committee, prepared draft Senate Bill 322 to reduce the impact of construction zones on traffic. The draft bill identified several issues that the RTC should address for all projects approved for construction. These issues included providing better information to the public, reducing closure durations and congestion during peak hour travel, minimizing concurrent projects on alternate parallel routes and repetitive closures on the same roadway, mitigating the effect on the roadway network and transit routes, and providing a website for project construction information. SB 322 was eventually withdrawn in committee, but only after receiving a strong commitment from the local partners that greater attention should be given to these issues before the 2007 legislative session. This follow-up requirement was reinforced in a letter from State Senator Nolan, chairman of the Committee on Transportation and Homeland Security, wherein he stressed the request that local partners submit a progress report prior to the 2007 legislative session addressing each issue raised by SB 322. The local stakeholders, consisting of all public entities, the majority of local utility providers, and other industry partners affected by or interested in the issues, formed a working group to address each issue. As the 2007 legislative session approached, a progress report was prepared, and the findings were presented to the committee in the early part of 2007. The report addressed each area of concern and, most importantly, identified 3 current practices still in need of improvement. These areas are: 1, the need to improve public access to construction information; 2, the need to coordinate roadway construction between local partners; and 3, the placement and timely removal of traffic control devices. We will summarize each of these issues in turn. To improve the access to construction information, the project signs used on publicly funded projects were recently redesigned to better communicate project and contact information, and the local entities have implemented project sign requirements for non-RTC funded projects. Another recent effort in responding to the public access to information need was the development of a Google Map interface for projects under construction. Google Maps has recently incorporated a new feature to view current traffic conditions. This feature was developed by Traffic.com within the last 2 years. And when you click on the button, you are able to view the relevant real-time traffic congestion data on the major highways in the valley, as well as accidents and construction zones. Another recent feature added to Google Maps is the ability for users to create their own maps, and we have taken advantage of this feature by creating a map of all RTC and agency-funded projects currently under construction. Anyone using Google Maps can search for roadway construction in Las Vegas or construction in Las Vegas, any kind of search, and by selecting user-created content, we'll find this map information. And when you click on the map, you will see lines and objects depicting projects currently under construction in the valley. The lines represent roadway construction, and there are symbols for utility projects, school flasher projects, and traffic signal projects. You can click on any line, and an information box appears showing the project name, the scope, the construction schedule, contact information, and a link to the agency website for more information. Alternatively, you can use the side window, scroll down, and find a project of interest and click on it. And a similar box appears with the same information in the map view. The information in these pop-up boxes is provided to the RTC by the local entities. To date, we have received project information from all agencies except NV Energy and Embark. To illustrate the dynamic nature of Google Maps, when you zoom into an area, the amount of information shown on the screen increases. More of these construction zone symbols from traffic.com and other Google partners appear, and when you see a utility symbol overlapping a public project, that is a sign of successful partner coordination. We will be adding a link to this map on the RTC website as soon as we have received and vetted the data from all local partners. One of the goals is to make the map available to other Google clients so anyone using a GPS navigation device will have the benefit of the information. It is also possible to share the map and allow direct collaboration where each entity can enter and update the project information. To address the second need of coordinating projects, which involves mostly projects that are still under design, the RTC will create and maintain a second Google map of projects that are scheduled to begin construction within 3 years. This will allow for monthly review of a hot list of projects at the Utility Coordination Committee meetings, where coordination needs can be flagged on the map for discussion. As soon as there is full collaboration from local entities and utility companies providing project information, we will move towards enhancing the capabilities of coordination and conflict avoidance by adding query and reporting capabilities either within Google Maps or through a GIS portal. Finally, there have been some new developments within recent months that address the need to encourage the timely removal of traffic control devices. First, local entities have adopted codes or policies to limit roadwork along major arterials to night work or non-peak hour times. Second, efforts are underway to incorporate lane rental fees, where a fee per mile of lane per day is assessed on all permits. This will reduce the total duration of lane closures with added surcharge fees for multiple lane closures. In summary, the efforts during the last 2 years have made significant progress in addressing the needs identified in the 2007 progress report. Greater public access to construction information has been made available by simplifying the project signs and taking advantage of the new capabilities in Google Maps. These new capabilities within Google Maps have also served as a springboard towards greater project coordination and conflict avoidance. And RTC member agencies have taken steps to reduce and control the duration of roadway lane closures. We look forward to the road ahead and to our continuing role in facilitating these ongoing efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is actually a tremendous effort, and it's great to see, this is what I talked about earlier, present an issue to Jacob in his group, and he comes up with solutions. And we all know the frustration of seeing a road constructed and tore apart, or seeing lanes with no work going on being closed. And first knowing about that helps, but then doing something about that and trying to coordinate the efforts so that we get as much work done in that road as possible without closing it, opening it, closing it would be tremendous. So thank you again. I think that's tremendous, and we don't really need the state to tell us to do this. We're actively working on it, and I think that's kudos to all of you.
Chairman,
Mayor?
I think Commissioner Maxfield is the only one who has any influence over Mr. Snow. So before you leave, would you tell him to fix the traffic lights so that they're synchronized, please?
Jacob, it appears we have another issue, and we need your diligence on.
Thank you.
I can't work on the mayor's color blindness, Commissioner. I've been working on it a long time. I can't make any headway on that. I would like to recognize the efforts of Dr. Fred O'Haney and Mike Hand, Paul Judd, who gave your presentation, and Fidel Calixto, from a former RTC staff member who really did a terrific job in pushing these issues. And I also like to recognize the entities, the county and all the cities and the utility companies for their great cooperation. We appreciate it. Could not have done anything without them. Thank you. Your next item, Mr. Chairman, is that the Regional Transportation Commission received a presentation on a transit stop safety study and direct staff accordingly. As we move into this next agenda item, I'd like to talk with you briefly about this bus shelter and bus stop safety study that we commissioned from Parsons Brinkerhoff. The safety of our riders and the community as a whole is paramount. There have been lots of allegations that what we have here in this community is different from what other communities have. That is not the case. Our system is safe, and it is based on sound design principles that are in place all across the country. We've asked Parsons Brinckerhoff to take a look at this issue because they are an international engineering consulting firm that has a tremendous amount of experience in transit and in this particular issue. We asked them to take a look at this, to survey this, to see what could be done additionally to potentially improve safety of our bus shelters. One issue that we know is critical is safe driving. Unfortunately, DUIs and other unsafe driving practices have compromised the safety of not just the driving public, but the riding public and the walking public. In September, we hosted a press conference on this issue with our partners at the Nevada Highway Patrol, Metro, and Stop DUI. Before we move forward on this agenda, I'd like to play a short clip from that news conference. If we could go ahead and play that. Now, please, Nick.
Right now, everybody's looking out there to place blame in areas where the blame is not necessarily laying. Right now, we want to blame the RTC, our government officials, that our bus shelters are unsafe. Well, I'm here to tell you, as one who has investigated the majority of the newsworthy fatal accidents at bus shelters, that's not the case. We know what the cause is. It's people who want to disobey our traffic laws, who want to drive while impaired, drive while texting. They just don't want to do what they're supposed to do when they're behind the wheel.
Let's not lose sight of what the cause is. The root cause is people driving impaired. And like Jacob mentioned, how many times have we seen these people crash into our homes? We've had people killed in their backyard surrounded by a block wall fence and have had impaired drivers go crashing through their fences, killing people. So it's not just the problem of law enforcement. It's not just the problem of the RTC. It's not just the problem of Stop DUI. It's everybody's problem.
My hat's off to the people at the RTC. They could have very easily said, hey, this is not our issue. We have perfectly safe bus stop shelters. It's the drivers, all right, but they haven't. They've moved bus stop shelters where they can. They've tried innovative things to make sure that their patrons are safe. This is everybody's issue. We will continue, law enforcement agencies throughout Southern Nevada will continue to target those things that we know lead to crashes that hurt or kill people.
Have you just heard from some of the experts on this issue? Kevin Haney with the Nevada Highway Patrol, Sandy Heverly from Stop DUI, and Detective Bill Redfern from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Again, I want to reiterate to you that, and to the community, that the safety of the traveling public is our top priority. And we have entered into this study with the intent to see if we could improve the safety of the traveling public. And we have some solutions to talk to you about today, and some ways that we think we can be successful in doing that. We can't build fortresses, however, that make transit inaccessible and that violate the law. We do have to deal with the Americans with Disabilities Act and make our system accessible to the public. We can't build fortresses around our bus stops when the real culprits are drivers who are not obeying the rules of the road. With that, I'll introduce Lee Gibson with Parsons Brinckerhoff to present to you the findings of the study. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you, Jacob. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I'm Lee Gibson with Parsons Brinckerhoff. I'm a Vice President, Senior Professional Associate, and I'm also the National Planning Practice Leader. I do want to point out from the beginning, we brought an interdisciplinary team to this project. We brought experts in transit operations, civil engineers, specifically traffic engineers, as well as roadway designers and urban planners to help look at the land use side of the issue of bus stop safety. So with that introductory comment, I'd like to get started. The presentation is structured around first discussing the purpose and need, looking at strategic risk assessment methodologies. I'm going to go through a toolbox that really outlines some of the conceptual solutions that may be of service to addressing this issue, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about next steps. The goal of our study, again, was to look at, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. Oh, use this? Okay. Oops, wrong button. Sorry about that. Okay. Again, the goal of our study is to look at ways to enhance study, manage risk, and develop that toolbox. I'm going to walk next through a series of slides that help characterizes the issue as we see it. First off, RTC's transit system has a total number of stops totaling over 3,000. That's over 3,000 stops that serve our metropolitan area and help people access the regional transit system. Of those 3,000 stops, there are 1,200 shelters. Again, these are the shelters that you see out in the community that serve to provide cover from the sun, wind, and rain for passengers. When we conducted a regional crash review, we saw this map shows the location of the crashes. There appears to be no statistically discernible pattern. There are some anecdotal concepts or anecdotal issues. I'm going to talk about those later, but fundamentally there is no statistical pattern to the accidents. During the two-year period, 2007 and 2008, there was one accident out of that group that did result in a fatality. When we looked at 2002 to 2008, 5 of these incidents resulted in at least one fatality. So I want to also make a note for the record, the database for crashes is a little bit discombobulated. There's information from Metro, there's information from the local entities. It's a little bit difficult to compare or to collect information and then compare the information because the definitions are different. I'm going to walk through some data we collected from Metro for the period 2005 to 2008. In that information, we discovered 73 crashes at shelters. 10 of those crashes occurred at occupied shelters. 21 involved DUI, and of the accidents at occupied shelters, all of them resulted in an arrest. This is a chart that breaks down the crash type by the number of crashes. What this tells us is this helps us really narrow down to the type of crash and whether or not the design disciplines and the planning disciplines can address those. And what we saw was that design options and management may help deal with or help improve safety for the crash type failure to maintain lane and turn or U-turn. And again, when I walk through the toolbox, I think you'll get a sense of how these work. At a micro level, we went out in the field and we wanted to really dissect a recent crash to glean information on what the type of solutions might be. We looked at the September 9th, 2008 accident crash at Tropicana and Mojave. This was an accident involving a single vehicle that vaulted a curb, resulted in one passenger injury. When we looked at some of the data of that accident, the bottom line up front issue that we saw was that the occupant had less than 1 second to respond to the events occurring when the perception reaction time of an average person is 2.5 seconds. In looking at all of the data, these are some of the lessons we've learned. Fundamentally, DUIs are uncontrollable by the RTC. The RTC can't do anything about that. Safe driving practices, to repeat what was in the video you saw, are really the number one thing that could eliminate all of the crashes. Perception reaction times work against passengers waiting at stops. We are able to glean from the information some site and street factors that we think influence crash dynamics and really feeds our toolbox. And finally, there needs to be a comprehensive database. Our traffic engineers really struggled with some of the issues trying to get to the bottom line of what was really driving some of the issues out there and trying to get to some of the geometric solutions. Okay, now I'm going to walk into our solution framework and then I'm going to get into the toolbox. To begin with, we have developed a strategic risk assessment methodology. The community needs a starting point to begin looking at these issues. What we wanted to do in our strategic assessment was first document passenger exposure, and we're going to also look at route and stop factors and then look at some very specific site factors as it relates to the design of bus stops and bus shelters so that we can come up with solutions. The factors we want to look at, oops, I'm way ahead of myself, sorry about that. Factors we're going to look at include traffic speed, traffic volume, ridership levels, previous crash history, and site-specific attributes. This is a chart I want to talk about very quickly. what we're trying to focus in on is areas where passengers have a high exposure because of long wait times. We want to really get to those locations where people have the most exposure, so we can begin assessing whether or not the conditions they're facing are particularly, if there's a design solution there. Some of the site-specific factors, they're being outlined right now in the video. They include the distance between the shelter and traffic, the shelter and the curb, the nearest driveway, the curb height, near side, far side, and mid-block stop orientation. So what is in the toolbox? The toolbox really is built around several dimensions. 1, moving the stop. 2, improving the stop. 3, closing the stop. And 4, regulating new stops through the land use planning process. And finally, public outreach and education. In terms of moving the stop, the variables we are looking at include the setback, the moving it up and down the street, the near side, far side question or issue, and finally the shelter reorientation onto the street. This animation is going to show you one way of improving the setback of the stop from the roadway. This next animation shows moving up and down the street. This one's at Charleston and Tenaya, one that's actually not too far from where I live, and I think these are the types of improvements that can help. When we look at improving the stop, a number of factors we determined include raising the curb height, adding a bus turnout, adding a curb extension or a bulb, adding a pedestrian buffer, and adding a pedestrian buffer are the solutions we have. And I'm going to walk through this graph next. This is a graph our traffic engineers and design engineers discovered. It shows the relationship between curb height, speed. Fundamentally, the bottom line here is that a 12-inch curb in the accident at Tropicana and Mojave could have redirected a car at a 7-degree angle traveling at 45 miles per hour. Examples of curb height improvements. One here, 2 examples, one on Las Vegas Boulevard, one on Paradise. The one in the lower right-hand corner is at your A station. These are examples of increasing that curb height along the sidewalk. Bus turnouts. This is at Red Rock Casino, an example of the turnout. Notice the expanded distance from the roadway, so the passengers are set further back. Here's a curb extension over on 4th and Charleston. Again, helping to increase that distance from the roadway side to where the passengers are located. Here's another animation showing a pedestrian buffer. Notice along the right-hand side there the plantings, landscaping that helps set up an upstream protective area from the bus stop. And finally, the realm barrier. This is something I think in the county is very familiar with. This is on Las Vegas Boulevard, the Jersey barriers that really separate the traffic from pedestrians. Finally, there's the issue of bollards. Bollards do have a role. However, they do present a number of challenges, including conflicts with the ADA. And really, with bollards, they're inappropriate for high-speed and medium-speed roads. They do present a roadway hazard for automobiles. They do have a use in low-speed, high pedestrian mixed-use areas. This is a kind of a mixed-use area in Portland where bollards are in front of a cafe. If you actually go out to the Howard Hughes Park, you'll also see some bollards again on the very low speed collector roads in that development. I'm going to go, this is an example of why bollards at high speeds is really problematic or not a good practice. Bollards actually help create hazards for people behind them because of the shrapnel coming from the vehicle as it passes up through and above the bollards. believe it was, Jacob, go ahead.
45.
Another solution would be to close a stop. However, this brings, while it does bring the benefit of reducing the risk of passengers and giving some operational efficiencies to the transit route that would be not having to serve that stop, it does result in reduced ridership, and it does result in a less accessible system. The next set of solutions include regulating the stop. Many of the entities already do this through public-private partnerships through the development agreement, where location and size of shelters are negotiated as part of a development plan. There's also the role of form-based codes. We did some work with the city of North Las Vegas on a transit-supportive land use plan where instead of having Euclidean zoning looking at uses, we looked at building types, and there have been some code adoptions that really help them deal with the placement and location of bus stops and bringing them more into the land use plan as a function of the site in an integrated fashion. And finally, the traffic impact study process that most of the entities follow, or all of the entities follow, affords an opportunity to get at a micro level and deal with the specifics on where bus stops can be located. I do want to note to the Nevada Department of Transportation, I know in some of the projects we've worked on, this issue also becomes part of the design process with the roadway, and that there are efforts made through NDOT's programs to also deal with this issue. Finally, in terms of public outreach, announcements to passengers on vehicles, public service announcements through the media, warning signs at shelter, and continuing community outreach and education. I think we've learned over the years that I've been involved with the transit system. Those are some of the best ways of educating the public about the opportunities and risks involved with transportation. In terms of the next steps, the RTC needs to move forward with assessing stop site conditions, implementing a data tracking. I do not want to underemphasize that. The data issues are very, very significant. And then finally, the RTC, working through its processes, needs to identify or will continue to identify measures and prioritize improvements that can be used for addressing this issue. I do want to add to Jacob or repeat some of the comments Jacob's made. We brought in a lot of our national experts, our international experts. This is an extraordinary system. It's extraordinarily safe. And RTC working through these types of processes will continue, to enhance the safety. I like to say, you're as safe on RTC's transit system as you are on an airplane. I mean, it's that quality of a system and that quality of a service. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions from the board, Your Honor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why is data tracking so important? One of the slides that you had would suggest that there really isn't any pattern here. So what do we expect to get from data tracking?
Well, I think in terms of data tracking, first off, having common definitions helps us understand, first, the underlying behavioral patterns, but secondly, and when we understand those, then we can get to the civil issues, the design issues of the roadway, and see if there are, in fact, design methodologies that could improve both vehicle safety as well as the transit passenger safety. So in any of these types of situations, we think that is always an improvement to better decision-making for roadway design and transit system operations. So it just gives us better information to really make sure that there isn't a trend.
Commissioner Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, to Lee, to you, or to Jacob, was there any thought or discussion about road warnings? I mean, for the driver, not the passenger, a rumble strip, or like the I forget what we call them, but on the side of the freeways where it drives attention to a driver who's veering off the lane and wake them up. Basically, there's different types of rumble strips, I guess. But besides just looking at trying to enclose a shelter, giving warning to people who might be otherwise occupied or something, is that?
Jacob, you want me to?
I can tell you, Commissioner, that there was also a parallel study that was looking at this very same issue that was done by the Clark County Leadership Forum. And they looked at that issue, and they concluded that the effectiveness of rumble strips was inconclusive, but they went into quite a bit of research and detail about that, including some of the sonic impacts on adjoining properties from those. But their conclusion was that the rumble strips could not be shown to be demonstrably effective.
All right. And I do want to advocate and say that first and foremost, safety is our concern, but personal responsibility, as being a motoring individual, that's where it needs to come from. We don't want tragic accidents to happen, and you can't build a fortress that you can't get in and out of. So outreach needs to go not to the folks or passengers or clients of the system only. It needs to continue on what Metro and the MAD people and so on and so forth teach about driving while being impaired. But I thought that was interesting. You talked about, and maybe statistically speaking, DUIs. You get arrested or whatever, and it's DUI. But we don't have the laws about, putting on makeup or eating a hamburger or texting or all these other things we're doing that we shouldn't be doing. And perhaps in gathering information, from a record-keeping point of view, if we could get law enforcement to be able to identify that type of behavior as well, then maybe that helps us in determining whether measures can make our system more safe by educating or fining or regulating, inappropriate behavior. I think that's what you're trying to allude to as well.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. In fact, a number of states have implemented laws where you, for example, can no longer talk on cell phones unless you have a hands-free mute or hands-free capability. So yes, those types of laws are coming onto the books for many states to address. I do want to point out there are a number of methodologies and techniques, both in NDOT and RTC's design standards, that address safety. We are looking at those types of safety treatments that go beyond that. So some of the things you talked about, I think, are already on the books for design, for roadway design.
Chairman?
Mayor?
Mr. Snow, what is our next step?
Our next step is we're going to go through every stop in the system and apply the toolbox measures that Mr. Gibson has identified and apply the matrix that has been identified to take a look at whether we will eliminate those stops, move those stops, or improve those stops. That's our next step.
Right. When you're making that step, I would suggest, and you're the expert, I would suggest that you keep in mind the economic impact this will have in order to rectify any issues that are out there, assuming they have to be rectified, because based on our experience right now, dollars are very tight, but I think public safety dollars have to be expended perhaps more rapidly than other kinds of dollars. And if we're going to make any changes, I think there has to also be the concept of affordability of those changes when you make your next presentation back to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely.
If we could pull up that slide as far as the next steps. It was either the last one or just along the lines of the mayor's comment.
No, next, I believe it's the next one.
It was towards the end. That was it.
There we go.
Okay. Mr. Gibson or Mr. Snow, just elaborate a little more on the assessment stop site conditions. I would, somewhere in the presentation I heard that the original map that identified accident sites, by this we're going to look at arterials, miles per hour, separation from street cuts, and that alone is going to create, I would think, an extensive list of classifications, or I guess that's the site condition. But talk a little bit more about how we're going to try to compress that into something that we can classify as A, B, C, D.
Do you want to start and
Sure.
I'll finish?
Oh, that'd be great. What we really are, and I don't want to get too far off in the esoterics of our risk assessment methodology, but fundamentally what we want to focus in on is trying to document the amount of time a person is exposed to the conditions of the roadway. If I can, I'm going to jump back a few slides to something earlier that was the exposure matrix. Oops, there we go. In this matrix, what we show is that risk is in part related to the wait time, how long a passenger may be at a stop, and then the number of passengers at a particular stop. The longer the wait and the higher the number of passengers, that's the thing we want to focus on so we can identify, go look at those stops where that exposure number is high. I'm not saying those are in any way unsafe stops or anything like that. Please do not take that. This is just a starting point for us to say, well, where do we want to look to deal with the most number of customers who are facing the largest amount of exposure to roadway traffic out there in the system.
I would echo some of the comments heard that what struck me as far as the presentation was we have the detective from Metro, our Highway Patrol, and Ms. Heverly speaking of illegal behavior as at least in 10 of the 10 that were cited, but I'm sure the majority of these, and balancing this board's desire to protect our passengers as best possible with the fact that how much public dollars do you try to rectify illegal behavior? I mean, that certainly needs to be addressed, but I'm not sure it's possible. I'm not sure it's possible to expend public dollars to hopefully prevent someone driving under the influence, because it may not be a bus stop shelter. I think Ms. Heverly brought it up. There's profiled here with our system, of course, but I, and I'm sure some of my colleagues, do get reports from our public works as people going through back walls or people crashing through sidewalks or into school zones that are impaired. And our ability to try to chase that illegal activity down is impossible. So I just, as far as the next direction, we certainly want to try to identify something in the system. But from what I've heard and certainly what I've been told, we have a safe system. And especially when we compare it to urban areas, this is not an anomaly. This is, there are similarities in the challenges we face as a transit organization. So I just put that on the record as far as balancing our investment to protect our passengers with, I don't think it's our mission to chase down the illegal activity. We'll be doing that in perpetuity. So. All right, so do we have enough direction? Mr. Christoph, this isn't, I talked to the attorney. No, and we're going to allow you to speak during, Mr. Christoph, we're going to allow you to speak during public participation. I have talked to the council. This is a discussion item. I think in the future, an item like this we could put into a public hearing. So I will certainly allow you to speak at the end, but not now.
Well,
Okay.
speaking at the end, when half the people are leaving the commission board here, to me,
Chris.
he gives the full, sir, he gives the full
Chris.
impact of what he's doing, but then you don't take our side, the citizens of Venice.
We want to take that, but not under this agenda item.
Well,
We,
he's turning this
and,
report.
and you can,
recommended by us.
it's a discussion item, Chris. You know how to get a hold of me. In the future, if you feel an item like this, you'd like to participate during the agenda item, I would be more than happy to place it as a public hearing item. But that's the policy that's in place. I'm going to abide by it, and if you just wait about 5 or 10 minutes, I will give you the opportunity to come up and present everything you have here.
And does that
Okay.
go on the record, Chairman?
What go on the
What I
record?
have to say and show?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Because a lot of people are watching this, and I know that they did a very strong national report. We have done the same thing.
Chris, and I am going to give you all the time you need.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, we now go to the administration and finance portion of your agenda, and Zev Kaplan, our general counsel, has item number 42.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, item 42 is an item comparable to the one that you considered at the Regional Flood Control District. That's to approve a resolution to minimize the use of eminent domain. In your backup, you had one draft of a resolution. We've revised that so it's consistent with the one you've approved by the Regional Flood Control District, and I believe that's been distributed to you and is available to the public. The gist of that is that due to the current problems in the economy and the recent changes to the law in Nevada on eminent domain, that this commission would recommend that both the RTC and the local governments within its jurisdiction make every effort to locate their projects and design them so as to eliminate or at a minimum minimize the use of eminent domain while we're in these current conditions. And so the recommendation is to approve this resolution to minimize the use of eminent domain.
As amended.
As amended, yes.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your next item is citizens' participation.
Is there anyone wishing to speak to the commission? Please step forward. Just by show of hands, how many anticipate speaking during public participation this morning? Okay. So we have two groups. Right. And would you please, thank you, and would you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Christoph, first name Peter. I reside in the county and have property in the city. I have been on and active as a research person with the former chairman of the Citizens for Better Transportation in 1993. That person has retired, and the new chairman is legislator who's taken the position is Bob Beer, Assemblyman. Myself, I'm still in the research, and I do very strong research on these things. I do not exaggerate. I go out and I meet people, not just in this area, but all over with our system. Knowing for 4 or 5 years, in the past 4 years, I've sent letters off and on and even called the RTC chairman and the commission here on the subject of concerned matters pertaining to safety. Not just as well as how the transportation has started to move very well and still moving great. But as I've listened to the person who has documentation, yes, there's a lot of DUI, a lot of uncontrolled people. But the important factor is we have a statement, the fact, from Los Angeles, one of the biggest, largest transit areas in the West Coast next to Oakland and San Francisco. They have never had a person killed. Oh, they had a few people injured and a few of their shelters wiped out. But we have had 13 in almost 7 years. And we've had numerous other people who have other kinds of injuries, lost their legs, arms, some of them in bad shape even to this day. Never get compensated, even from the person who caused the accident. Those things are very important when we have two issues. Are these people sitting there, are they patrons of the RTC to take the bus service? Yes. Second, is that shelter has liability, responsibility in case that person is injured by a person who does not have insurance. And we have many, many people in this town, you know, as a transit, and some of them, they don't want to get insurance. They don't care. People to this day, and in this town, still exist on what we call no help. They get a welfare check, or they get help with Medicare with the medical. But the concerned matter is that I've looked at several things, and we have a multi-million-dollar project on North.
The overhead that we're looking at now?
Well, I'll give you the documents of that, because I want you to have it.
Just what are we, if this is yours, what are we looking at?
Would you
Okay.
pass these off, Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Christoph. Please continue.
Now, we have a major project that's not in there, but the description of the first page shows it with the poles that indicating that they could be used too. This is on Jerry Nugget all the way down. There's about, I think, 6 of them, as we've taken pictures of them. They are 1 foot by 6 in height. Let me bring it over. There we go. Now, it's not because of the hybrid trolley car that they did that, but they want to show that they have some good bus stops, not just for the trolley cars, for the double-deckers, because as I looked at the Civic Center for the county, where they're going to put the same trolleys in there, there's no high-pitch, 1'6" sidewalk, curbs. Now, those curbs, that picture was sent to 9 cities to get some kind of a background on our system. And we explained them in text on a 10-page of what has happened here and why and how the footage of the sidewalk is, some of it is 5, some of it is 4. And the important factor is plus accessibility. This one shows, it's the state of the art, that anybody takes a trolley up and down. It's beautiful. But once you pass that and come into the city and you go out to the other place, we have 2,916 pictures that I have in my possession on digital disc showing, even in Boulder City of Henderson, up by Lake Mead Drive, there is no curb. It's on the inside of that section there. No curb, and yet that day that we talked about the gentleman on Tropicana and Mojave, early in the morning I was called by channel, I think it was channel 13, please come down, we want to show you what happened. We know who you are. Well, thank God it was wiped out at 8 o'clock in the morning, nobody was there. But in the afternoon at 3 o'clock, boom, here's another one. Nobody can predict these things, but I believe that we can never predict them, but if we don't put something in front of these bus stops, because we cannot move them back to 10 feet, as Mr. Jacob Snow says and his staff, because these people won't let us do it, then we should put a curb like this that's steel involved with that high-pitch curb and that plate, and steel not filled with concrete to stop any vehicle that penetrates not directly straight through, but at an angle. Now, we have people from the Stanford University and from another university in Boston saying that the steel won't throw shrapnel. It'll bend. If it's a certain height, it'll bend. It won't break. And that curb that's 1'6" plus that steel poles that spread in certain ways so the buses can open the doors front and to the back, will stop 90% of any impact, even a 2-ton truck. Now, I'm glad to turn this document over, but nobody ever asked me. We want to make it safe, not just for the people in Las Vegas, but the tourists. Unfortunately, the woman that was killed on July the 6th, she was here visiting. And the officer in question, I have his name, I'm not here to embarrass him, said she was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, that's wrong. You should never say that. The woman that wanted to come this morning, she's going through a trauma again. That's a Porsche, huge, very, very wonderful person, but she has these traumas, and she's lost both legs, and she's on welfare, and not with very limited help. But the important factor is you're an engineer. Some of these people understand. As the person said it before, we cannot stop somebody running into a wall. We can't stop somebody going into somebody's backyard. Understandable. But this was engineered by a company that we are involved with that's put them in to make sure that that is going to be safe. I have the report on it. They don't know that I got the report. I talked to that company, and they said, we were told that we want the best high-pitch curb for safety concerns. Now, all I'm just saying is, as I spoke to the general manager, it's good to have people with your background, I'm not an engineer, to give us help. Put out something to say, hey, please, what can we do to solve this problem? And I grant you, you might get 1,000 people sending you email or things. If we can't stop this with this, then there's something wrong, because that is guaranteed to stop any vehicle that's moving 45. And mostly all the accidents occurred in this city. Henderson, Clark County, and other areas, the speed was 35 to 45. No area that we see the accidents were 25. When you're doing 35, commissioners, you're doing 45. If you're doing 45, you're doing 55. If a person is on the cellular phone and he or she gets feeling like somebody's trying to push you over, she's not looking far to the right. She just moves right and goes right up on that sidewalk that's only less than 5 inches, that curve. A lot of area, it's only 3 inches. The one on Boulder Highway has no curb. So this is the problem that I want you to understand, that we can solve the problem. Maybe we can't go back 10 feet like a lot of people have asked and demand, but let's fortify that curb and let's give it a chance. It's tested itself right here. We have never had any problem with this project that's on North Las Vegas Boulevard to this day. Now, why don't we do it? It doesn't cost a fortune. It costs bringing up that curb to a certain dimension of 60 feet or 80 feet for the buses that come into that area. So I want you to know, we spend endless hours with people. I'm not an expert. I'm only the guy who's a messenger. If we're not going to do something similar to this, and we're just going to talk about people with DUI and some crazy person don't care, then we're wrong. Because we have the technology right here in front of us, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else wishing to speak? And Mr. Kristoff, if you have anything else other than the package you gave us, make sure we get it after the meeting.
I believe that they spend, Chairman, they spend $50,000. I only spend, out of my money and other people's money, $1,200. It's so simple. It's right in front of our face. Let's do something. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rob Lancelot. That's Lancelot. This is our solution, and I believe in this very much. I'm the creator and owner of CatGuard. I've had several meetings with few councilmen, with Jacob Snow, and we have an ongoing problem. Like this gentleman before me said, there are a lot of accidents. They're called accidents. Where I stand right now, to the end of this podium, is the street. That is not safe, especially in this busy, busy Las Vegas area that we live in. I put countless hours on design on this. We have a project team. We're looking to be hopefully on the next agenda to speak about this, because people out there have a right to be safe. They have a right. We as a company are proposing this to you as an answer for these horrific accidents, horrific. We're talking, a list that I have is disturbing. June 2nd, 2007, Rainbow in Charleston. Horrible. I know you guys seen the clip. March 15, 2005. Virginia Williams, Rachel Jimenez, and Ellen Jimenez, 14, 16 years old, waiting for the bus. Waiting for the bus, like anybody here would be doing. We could all be sitting there thinking it's the greatest day in the world, and now we have an accident. I put countless time in this, and I really hope you guys would suggest something like this on our Las Vegas streets. Like I said, we have been in production. We are waiting for some type of answer, and we'd love to work with all of you to get this out there. I would love even to donate the first one to Portia Hughes. She's disabled now over an accident. They're called accidents. That's why we're here. We know about DUI. We know about the late nights in Las Vegas, but there's medical conditions. There's young drivers that have no experience driving. It happens everywhere in the nation. Las Vegas is the worst. And I really hope you take this seriously, and I would love to have a follow-up meeting, or please may I be on the agenda for the next meeting. Thank you for your time very much. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Lancelot. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Seeing no one, this meeting is adjourned.